Welcome to this stories. It all began with a spark, a flutter deep inside that whispered secrets of something forbidden. If you've ever loved deeply, you understand the ache behind those words. The subtle shifts, the tiny details that once felt insignificant but now weigh heavily on my heart. Like her late arrivals, or the spark in her eyes when she glanced at her phone, a thrill I thought had faded forever. Clara, my wife, radiated confidence and independence, a force of nature in her own right. That was what captivated me about her from the very beginning. But lately, her confidence had transformed into something deeper, a flicker of pride that both thrilled and terrified her. She moved with an air of defiance, her chin lifted just enough to catch the light, her gaze piercing through the shadows of unspoken desires. She moved through the world with an air of mystery, as if she held a secret that rendered her beyond reach. At first, I tried to ignore it. After 12 years of marriage, I wondered if my fears were just a figment of my imagination. Perhaps it was the weight of our responsibilities. Perhaps this was just a fleeting moment in her heart. Yet, that feeling lingered, pulling me in deeper. I couldn't help but watch her, captivated by the subtle changes how her style transformed, revealing a side of her I had never truly seen. It wasn't that she had ever neglected her appearance, but now, every detail felt charged with a new significance. Fresh outfits, a captivating fragrance, an elegant attire that hinted at newfound confidence. And then there was the way she'd talk about work. She'd always been passionate about her job, but now there was a smugness when she mentioned her late nights or her work dinners. She made sure to drop hints about how important she was becoming, how valued she was. I wanted to believe it was all true, that her hard work was paying off, and she was being recognized for her dedication. But something about it felt rehearsed, like she was performing for me. One evening, as we sat at the dinner table, she was on her phone more than usual. She laughed at something soft and intimate, a laugh that was meant for someone else. I felt a cold sweat break out across my skin, but I forced a smile and asked, "Who's making you laugh like that?" She looked up, her eyes a little too bright. "Oh, just a friend from work. You know how it is." I didn't know how it was. Not anymore. I started paying closer attention, watching for the little things she didn't realize she was doing. The way she'd turn her phone screen away when I walked by, the way her tone softened when she was texting someone, and the way she'd end conversations abruptly when I entered the room, as if she didn't want me to hear what she was saying. It was around this time that I decided to stop being passive. If she was hiding something, I needed to know what it was. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through her phone. It wasn't easy. She'd become more careful, more secretive. But one morning, while she was in the shower, I saw her phone on the nightstand. The screen lit up, and I saw a name I didn't recognize, Rodney. There was a message preview that read, "Can't wait to see you again." My heart pounded as I picked up the phone and scrolled through their conversation. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. It wasn't just flirtation, it was an affair. Specific plans, affectionate messages, and mentions of their meetings. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. This was real. Clara, my wife, the woman I'd built a life with, was cheating on me. And she wasn't just hiding it away. She cherished it deeply. She was teasing me, her allure just out of reach. I placed the phone down, my heart racing as I ensured no evidence remained of my secret glance. I lingered in the stillness of our room, heart pounding with unspoken thoughts. Facing her in that moment felt like it could have been so simple. Yet, deep down, I understood it would never fulfill the longing that consumed me. I longed for her to grasp the gravity of her decisions. I longed for her to see that the grip she thought she had was nothing more than a fragile dream. I've chosen a path that feels both thrilling and dangerous. I promised myself I wouldn't let my heart lead me astray. I thought I could wait, play it safe. I was determined to prove to Clara that her pride was a fragile facade. I was ready to reclaim what was mine. And when the moment arrived, I would bring a secret that could unravel everything she held dear. And I would ensure she carried that memory forever. The days blurred into one another, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts, barely present at work, lost in a maze of what-ifs and stolen moments. Confronting Clara right then would have felt so right, yet so wrong. Of course. Yet, it would end far too soon. She'd refuse to admit it, bend the reality, and attempt to shift the blame away from herself. No, if I was going to take this leap, it had to be perfect. I craved something tangible, a truth she couldn't escape from. no matter how hard she tried. Taking that first step felt like a whisper of possibility. Collect whispers of the heart. I began by meticulously noting every little thing she did. When she stepped out, the world felt heavy with unspoken words, and when she returned, the air crackled with tension. Her every glance held secrets, and the space between them pulsed with longing. I began to see a connection that stirred something deep within me. Wednesday nights, when her networking events stretched into the twilight, each moment heavy with unspoken tension. Friday lunches that lingered, each moment stretching into a secret world where time lost its grip. And then there were those unexpected weekend errands that drew her away, leaving her lost in thoughts of what could be, for hours on end. I masked my true feelings behind a facade of calm, playing the role of the devoted husband. Is work pulling you away from what truly matters? I'd ask with a smile, and she'd reply in that rehearsed way that made my heart race. It's a feeling that lingers, a spark that ignites when you least expect it. I'm simply wanted by so many, yet it feels like a secret longing. Her eyes sparkled with a fierce pride, igniting a fire of longing and frustration deep within me. On a Wednesday night, as she slipped away to one of her late networking events, I couldn't help but follow her. I lingered in the shadows, heart pounding with a mix of thrill and longing as I followed her car. It was uncharted territory for me, yet an unexpected thrill coursed through my veins as I found myself captivated, my heart racing with each subtle shift she made. Her heart raced as she navigated through the city, finally parking in the shadowy embrace of the hotel garage. I parked close, my heart racing as she stepped out of the car, her heels echoing like a secret promise on the pavement. My heart raced as I watched her with him, a striking figure in a perfectly fitted suit. In a fleeting moment, their lips met softly, a secret shared before they slipped away into the shadows. I pulled out my phone, my heart racing as I captured fleeting moments, each click a secret whisper of something more. They were blurry, captured from afar, yet they ignited a fire within me, urging me to move ahead. I waited for an hour, my heart racing, until she finally appeared. Her hair was slightly disheveled, her lipstick subtly smudged. Her expression was a mix of satisfaction and a hint of something more dangerous, a secret pleasure that danced just beneath the surface. I tightened my fists, battling the storm of emotions within me. This was only the start. The following day, I dared to push the boundaries further. I discreetly placed a tracker in her car to monitor her whereabouts, seeking clarity in our strained relationship. I installed monitoring software on her laptop to discreetly observe her communications, aiming to uncover the truth. A rush of guilt washed over me, yet I clung to the thought that she had shattered the trust we once shared. I was merely trying to create a balance between us. In the weeks that followed, the fragments of their secret began to align, igniting a spark that felt both thrilling and dangerous. I created a collection, a hidden trove of secrets filled with snapshots of their stolen moments, timestamps of their clandestine rendezvous, and more images of her with him. Rodney was a captivating consultant, a figure of allure from a distant corner of the city. He was charming, self-assured, and a little too full of himself, the type of guy who seemed beyond reach. Clara's affair was a secret that ignited her heart in ways she never expected. It was a secret thrill, a forbidden mark of pride that ignited a fire within her, making her feel invincible. She basked in the illusion of control, savoring the hidden life she led, a thrilling secret that felt both intoxicating and perilous. She was blissfully unaware of the storm that awaited her. One Saturday afternoon, fate smiled upon me. Clara stood in the dim light of the backyard, a glass of wine cradled in her hand, her voice a soft whisper as she spoke on the phone, the air thick with unspoken longing. I lingered by the window, heart racing as her words floated softly through the night, a secret I longed to be part of. Her voice lowered as she spoke to Rodney, the atmosphere filled with unexpressed emotions. Her voice quivered with excitement, a gleam of eagerness in her eyes. "I can't wait for next weekend," she whispered, as if the words were a secret meant only for him. Only we exist in this moment. Only whispers of longing. There it was, a secret longing. A fleeting chance. My heart raced uncontrollably. This was the moment I had longed for, a heartbeat away from everything I shouldn't want. I had to ensure that this weekend didn't mark the start of their escape. Their fragile world was crumbling, the illusion of control slipping away like sand through their fingers. I sought assistance from an unlikely ally, Rodney's wife. Her name was Margaret, and she remained blissfully unaware of the secrets swirling in the shadows, where desire and danger intertwined. I found her on social media and sent a quiet, anonymous message that felt like a secret longing. Your heart aches with the weight of betrayal. He's been sneaking away with my wife, lost in the shadows of hidden rooms. If you seek the truth, reach out to me. Her reply came swiftly, a spark igniting in the silence between them. In just an hour, I found myself lost in conversation with her on the phone. Her voice trembled with heartbreak and disbelief as I revealed the truth. We sealed our fate with a promise, a vow to face them side by side. Her desire for justice mirrored my own, a shared longing that felt both exhilarating and dangerous. It was a simple plan, yet it felt like a dangerous game we were playing. I would allow them their fleeting escape. Let Clara and Rodney believe they've escaped the shadows of their secret. Then, in that fleeting moment, I'd hand over the package, our eyes locking in a secret that felt both thrilling and wrong. A meticulously gathered collection of truths that would shatter any hopes of denial or escape. Clara stood on the edge of a precipice, her heart racing as she realized her pride had woven a web of her own design, ensnaring her in a bittersweet embrace. This time, I would step into the light, refusing to be the one abandoned in shadows. I was in control now, and I was going to make damn sure she felt the weight of her choices. The week leading up to Clara and Rodney's weekend getaway was a test of patience. I played my part perfectly, the doting husband who knew nothing, smiling as Clara floated through the house with a smug confidence. She was on the phone constantly, her voice bright and excited as she made arrangements for her conference. I didn't ask questions. I didn't make her feel like I was suspicious. Instead, I helped her pack for her business trip, folding her clothes and slipping in a small surprise. An envelope filled with printed screenshots of her conversations with Rodney, photos of their hotel meetups, and a note that read, "You'll need this when you see him." That envelope was just a taste of what was to come. Friday afternoon, Clara kissed me goodbye, her lips cool and detached. "Don't miss me too much," she teased, her eyes gleaming with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. "I'll try to manage," I replied, forcing a small smile. My heart pounded as I watched her wheel her suitcase out the door, the handle creaking under the weight of the inside. Once she was gone, I went into action. I'd made arrangements with Margaret to meet outside the hotel where Clara and Rodney were staying. We had coordinated down to the last detail. I felt a strange sense of camaraderie with this woman, a mutual desire for the truth to come crashing down on our cheating spouses. Saturday afternoon, I stood in the parking lot across from the hotel, waiting for Margaret to arrive. She pulled up in a modest sedan, her face set with determination. She was younger than I'd expected, with tired eyes and a weary posture that spoke of a broken heart. "You ready for this?" I asked, my voice low. "More than ready," she replied. She held up her phone, where she had pulled up Rodney's location using the family tracking app he'd forgotten to disable. "They're in room 312. We entered the hotel together, each step pushing my adrenaline higher. The air was thick with anticipation. At the front desk, I pretended to be a concerned husband trying to surprise his wife. A combination of charm and a little bit of cash was all it took to get a keycard to their room. When we reached the door, Margaret and I exchanged a look. Her hands were trembling, and I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. I raised my hand and knocked hard. There was a brief silence before I heard movement on the other side. The door opened, and there stood Rodney, his hair tousled, wearing nothing but a towel slung low around his waist. His eyes flickered with confusion and then panic as he registered who we were. "What the hell are you doing here?" he stammered, trying to sound confident, but failing miserably. "We're here for the truth," I said, my voice steady and cold. "Now get out of the way." Before he could protest, I stepped into the room, Margaret close behind me. Clara emerged from the bathroom, her expression freezing when she saw us. She was wrapped in a hotel robe, her face bare and vulnerable for the first time in months. "Jerry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. What are you doing here?" "Isn't it obvious?" I said, pulling the envelope out of my jacket. I tossed it onto the bed. "I thought you might want to share these with your little boyfriend." She picked up the envelope with shaking hands, her eyes scanning the contents. The color drained from her face as she realized the extent of what I knew. Her pride, that smug confidence, was crumbling before my eyes. I can explain, she began, but I cut her off. Don't. This isn't about explanations. It's about consequences. You've been acting like you're untouchable, Clara, like your affair is some kind of badge of honor. But here's the reality. You're nothing but a liar and a cheat, and now everyone's going to know it. Margaret stepped forward, her voice shaking with emotion. And you, she said, glaring at Rodney. You're going to explain to our kids why their father is a selfish, unfaithful coward. Rodney opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He looked like a deer caught in headlights, paralyzed by fear and shame. I turned to Clara. You thought you were in control, didn't you? You thought you could play me like a fool. But here's the thing you've lost. You lost the moment you thought your pride was worth more than our marriage. Her eyes filled with tears, and for a brief moment, I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with. But it was too late for sympathy. I had given her everything, and she'd thrown it away. Pack your things and go, I said, my voice cold and final. When you get home, I'll have divorce papers waiting for you. You'll never have a chance to feel my warmth again. Clara fell onto the bed, tears streaming down her face, while Rodney watched, his heart aching, feeling utterly powerless. Margaret and I shared a fleeting glance, a quiet promise that we had crossed a line we could never uncross. We stepped out of the hotel, the cool air wrapping around us like a secret, lifting the heaviness that had lingered too long. The ache lingered, a bittersweet reminder of love lost. But there was also relief in knowing that the illusion of control had finally shattered. I wasn't the fool she thought I was, and I never would be again. The drive home was surreal. The adrenaline that had kept me steady through the confrontation was fading, leaving behind an empty ache in its place. I didn't regret what I'd done. Clara needed to face the truth of her actions, and so did Rodney. But that didn't make the betrayal sting any less. When I got back to the house, I went straight to my office and pulled out the divorce papers I prepared in advance. I had taken every precaution, consulting a lawyer discreetly and making sure I was covered financially. Clara would be walking away with nothing but her pride, and even that had been shattered. I left the papers on the dining table, along with a letter I'd written days ago. I didn't expect her to read it. It wasn't for her benefit anyway. It was for me, a way to release everything I needed to say. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat in the quiet of our empty house, thinking about everything we'd built together. All the years we'd spent side by side, the plans we'd made for the future. Now it felt like someone else's life, a story that had ended long ago. Hours passed, and I eventually fell asleep on the couch. I woke to the sound of the front door opening and closing softly. Clara had come home. She stood in the doorway, her face pale and drawn. She looked smaller somehow, as if the weight of her lies had finally crushed her. I see you left the divorce papers, she said, her voice trembling. You're really going to end it like this? Without giving me a chance to explain? I shook my head. There's nothing to explain, Clara. I know everything. I know you've been seeing Rodney for months. I know you planned this getaway. I know you thought you were in control. I stood up, keeping my distance. You were willing to throw away our marriage for a fantasy. You made your choice. Tears welled up in her eyes. It wasn't a fantasy. It was a mistake. I got caught up in something I couldn't control, and I was too proud to stop it. But I never stopped loving you, Jerry. I never meant to hurt you like this. Her words were empty, hollow. They might have meant something months ago, before I saw the truth with my own eyes. But now, they were nothing more than the desperate pleas of a woman who had lost everything. You love the thrill, I said quietly. You love the idea of being untouchable, of being in control. But look where that got you. You lost me. You lost the life we built together. And for what? A man who ran and hid the moment he was confronted with the truth. She stepped closer, her voice pleading. Please, Jerry, give me a chance to make this right. We can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes. I shook my head. It's too late. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. You can take whatever you need tonight, but I want you gone by morning. We're done. Clara stared at me for a long moment, her face a mixture of disbelief and grief. Then, without another word, she turned and walked upstairs. I listened to her footsteps, the sound of her packing. There were no angry words, no final pleas. Just the quiet, resigned acceptance of a woman who knew she had lost. I stayed downstairs, nursing my whiskey and listening to the distant rustle of her departure. Hours later, just before dawn, I heard the front door open and close for the last time. Clara was gone. For a moment, I felt an ache, a familiar longing for the life we'd once had. But then I reminded myself that it was all an illusion. The woman I'd loved was gone long before today. She'd been replaced by someone driven by pride and control, someone who had betrayed everything we'd built together. The next morning, I called my lawyer and set the divorce proceedings in motion. Clara tried to reach out a few times, sending texts and leaving voicemails asking for another chance, begging for forgiveness. But I never responded. She'd made her choices, and now she had to live with them. Weeks later, I received a message from Margaret. She wanted to thank me for reaching out, for giving her the truth she needed to move on. She'd left Rodney and was focusing on rebuilding her life. In a strange way, we had become allies in our mutual quest for closure. I decided to do the same. I focused on my work, my friends, and the things that brought me peace. The scars of betrayal didn't fade overnight, but they became easier to bear with time. I learned to trust myself again, to believe that I deserved better than a life built on lies. One evening, as I stood on the porch of my now peaceful home, I watched the sun dip below the horizon and felt a strange sense of calm. I'd taken back control of my life, and I'd done it without losing myself in the process. Clara's pride had been her downfall, but my strength had been my salvation. And that, I realized, was the ultimate victory. Weeks turned into months, and as the legal process of divorce trudged along, I felt an unexpected sense of peace. My house was quieter, emptier, but it was a peaceful emptiness, free from the tension and secrets that had filled every corner. I no longer felt like I was living in someone else's lie. The day the divorce was finalized was a day I'll never forget. I sat across from Clara in the conference room, her once bright confidence now dulled into a quiet resignation. She signed the papers with a trembling hand, and when it was over, she looked up at me. "Jerry, I know I don't deserve it, but I hope one day you can forgive me," she said, her voice fragile, barely above a whisper. I met her gaze, searching for any trace of the woman I'd loved. "I've moved on, Clara. I wish you the best, but forgiveness doesn't change the past. You made your choices, and now we both have to live with them." With that, I stood up, walked out of the building, and into the next chapter of my life. A week later, I received a package on my doorstep. It was addressed from Clara, and I almost tossed it aside, thinking it was another desperate attempt at reconciliation. But curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. Inside was a letter and a small box. The letter was handwritten in Clara's familiar script. "Jerry, you were right. I let my pride ruin everything we had. I was so caught up in feeling important, in feeling like I was in control, that I didn't see what I was losing until it was too late. I know I can never make things right, but I wanted you to have this. It was a gift you gave me on our first anniversary, a reminder of a time when I knew I was loved. I hope that someday you'll find someone who loves you the way you deserve to be loved. Clara." I opened the small box and found the delicate silver bracelet I had given her years ago. It was engraved with the words "forever and always," a symbol of a promise that had been broken. I closed the box and put it aside. It wasn't about the past anymore. It was about the future. I wasn't going to let her betrayal define me. I wasn't going to carry her mistakes as my burden. A few months later, I got a call from Margaret. She was doing well, rebuilding her life after leaving Rodney. We'd stayed in touch, sharing stories of resilience and recovery, finding strength in the fact that we'd both survived the storm. "Hey," she said, her voice warm and familiar. "I was wondering if you'd like to meet up sometime. You know, not to talk about them, but just to see how you're doing." I hesitated for only a moment. "Yeah, I'd like that." We met for coffee at a small cafe, and it felt different this time. Lighter. The conversation flowed easily, and for the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely connected to someone. "You know," Margaret said, stirring her coffee, "we're both living proof that betrayal doesn't have to be the end of the story. Sometimes it's just the beginning of something better." I smiled, nodding. "Yeah, maybe it's the beginning of something real." Over the next few months, Margaret and I grew closer. What had started as a bond forged through shared pain evolved into something genuine and unexpected. She was smart, kind, and fiercely independent. Everything I admired in a partner. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. One evening, as we stood on a bridge, overlooking the city lights, I took a deep breath and looked at her. Do you believe our second chance came because we dared to confront the truth rather than turning away from it? She leaned against the railing, her eyes sparkling with a mix of longing and desire. We found our way back to each other, defying the whispers that sought to tear us apart. We dared to embrace a love that felt both exhilarating and dangerous, a connection that was undeniably ours. When our hands met, an undeniable connection formed, both exhilarating and profound. The touch ignited a spark, a fleeting moment that felt both alive and dangerously close to the edge. Clara and Rodney were fleeting moments, a bittersweet echo in our hearts. Heart-wrenching yet essential moments that brought us here. Yet, that was not the conclusion. We became the storytellers, crafting a tale of our own, unburdened by the shadows of past betrayals. As the city lights twinkled below us, a warmth spread through me, washing away the anger I once held. I refused to let my past shape me. I was shaped by the choices I made, each one a whisper of longing and desire. A man who confronted his reality, reclaimed his power, and discovered a love that blossomed amidst the shadows of past pain. I had broken the fragile facade Clara clung to, leaving her vulnerable and exposed. Yet, in that moment, I found my own liberation. And that was the sweetest triumph, the kind that whispered I had reclaimed my heart at last. Dear listeners, your whispers mean the world to us. Share your secrets in the comments. And if you feel the spark, like, share, and subscribe to keep this connection alive.